Greetings. This is Miles from Milestone Investing, and I want to just look at Persimmon. Now, today is Thursday, the 8th of March, 2018, and it's 9 o'clock in the evening. And so we've had the Wednesday, we're obviously traded on Wednesday, and on Thursday we would have got in. I want to look at Persimmon specifically right now, because obviously it's kind of behaving, it's moving flat, it's flatlining, and I want to just look at that and see basically what we can make of it for today. So Persimmon was paying a dividend of 125p, which is the equivalent of 96% if you went long. Okay, so what do we know about Persimmon? Well, we know that their figures from 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, it's been going upwards. So they're basically a pretty strong company with solid performances, from 227 million in 2013 all the way to 996 million profit in 2017. So these guys really are doing well. Okay, so I just wanted to share that with you. But what came out today in the City AM newspaper was this article. So I'm going to read it to you. House demand falls for 11th straight month. And then it goes on to say, woes in the UK property market grew in February as demand for homes in the UK fell for the 11th month in a row, a closely watched survey has suggested. A monthly survey by the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors showed the number of new buyers registering with estate agents fell in February, with 16% more respondents saying they had seen a fall in inquiries rather than a rise. However, Ricks said the figure varied between regions. While new buyer inquiries increased in Scotland, Northern Ireland and Yorkshire, they fell sharply in London, the South East and East Midlands. The number of estate agents noticing a drop in sales also rose, 70% saying sales had fallen rather than risen. But supply also fell, with 15% more respondents saying they had valued fewer houses in February than they had a year earlier. The survey also suggested prices had remained flat for the 9th month in a row, while estate agents said they expected growth to remain muted over the next 3 months. London, the South East, East Anglia, and the North were particularly weak when it came to growth expectations, Ricks reported. The divergent regional picture is becoming increasingly pronounced, with key indicators across huge swathes of the country still showing considerable resilience, but data for London, the South East, and East Anglia rather more subdued, said Simon Rubinson, chief economist at Ricks, which stands for the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. The news came a day after separate data showed UK house prices are rising at their slowest pace since 2013. Halifax monthly house price index showed prices fell 0.7% in the 3 months between December and February and grew just 1.8% in the year to February. Okay, and so basically today's newspaper is telling us that going forward, house prices are beginning to weaken, and that means when we see next year's financial statements for the respective companies, we can expect them to maybe be struggling a little bit. Okay, so I thought I'd show that to you, because obviously when you get that report coming out today, then it's not going to be looking good for housing. What am I thinking of? Developers. It won't look good for developers. My brain went to sleep for a second. Okay, and so let's have a look at their performance today and see what we can make of it. Let me just take this out for a second. Right, on the right is Persimmon, and this is Persimmon trotting along here yesterday. Okay, and they were moving in a range of between 2640 and 2680. That's what they range yesterday, and today they gap down. And if I take it from yesterday's price, and I'll take the lowest of 2642, 2642.5 minus the drop. And I'm going to take the opening price of today. So it opened at 2519.5. So that's a drop of 123 points. Now, they paid a dividend of 125, as we saw in the newsletter. So practically they dropped by the dividend, and they didn't drop any more. Now, normally I would say to you that, you know, the prices will fall by 50% more. And in this case, it did nothing of the sort. It basically hit its target effectively, and then it started to bounce up. Okay? So let's look at the FTSE 100. What was the FTSE doing today? Well, here's the FTSE for today, in between these two blue lines. And it's basically zigzagging. It opened at, I'm going to go with 8 o'clock open. So at 8 o'clock, which is here, it opened at 7152.9. And it was basically zigzagging in a relatively narrow range up until about here. And that's about it. Basically, let's go up to 2 o'clock. And then from 2 o'clock onwards, it went in an absolute upward climb. It was sprinting uphill. And so really this 2 o'clock caused it to move upwards. So let's look over here at 2 o'clock. Did we see that impact? And the answer is no. At 2 o'clock, it was just going sideways. So the upward march in the FTSE 100 had no impact. So it bobbing up and down was relating to these small movements here. And so the upward move has something to do with another industry, but not the housing industry. And we just saw today's newspaper was suggesting the housing industry is not in a happy state at the moment, according to the City AM. So let's just do a quick reminder. What happened last year this time? So I'm going to go to last year this time, so we can, you know, just have an idea of how this particular company performs when it goes ex-dividend. Now, in March this year, they paid a 25p dividend. Now, we had a bigger dividend this time around. Here we go. This is where basically when it went XD. And then about 1, 2, 3 days later, on the 13th of March, in fact, you can see it here actually. The highest point, I'll go back to it. Here we go. The highest point was 2142.4. And then it basically hits that right here on the 13th at 2144. The ex-dividend date was the 8th, by the way. And so by the 13th, it hits 2144. And so therefore we could have, had you gone long, you would have come out with your 25p dividend. So that gave you, let me just go back to my ancient numbers and just tell you what percentage that was. The 25p dividend would have given you a return of about 23%, right? But we had a whopping 125%. Sorry, 100%, sorry. So let's go to where that was relevant. And the one that was similar to that was in June. And so in June, they paid a dividend of 110p, which is pretty close. That's a 90% dividend. So when did that happen? Here we go. It happened right here. On the 14th of June, or in fact, the ex-dividend date was 15th of June, but we would have come in, as you know, a day before. So the 14th of June, we would have dropped in, and we would have waited until this point here, which is the 20th of June, I'm sorry, 20th of July, sorry, to get our money back. So we had to really wait a month. And my stats tell me it's 35 days to be exact. 35 calendar days as opposed to weekdays. Calendar days, 35 days. So just over a month to get your money back and walk away. Now, to be blunt, 90% in a month is pretty good going, unless you are super, super, super ambitious. It's pretty good going. And so if we look here, I want to just look at the candlesticks. So basically here, the MACD, and these are daily candlesticks, by the way. The MACD was going sideways, and then it took a dip right here, all right? Just before that right here. And then it was still going down when it paid out. So this was a fortuitous little recovery, to be blunt, because the MACD was suggesting it was on a downturn. However, here, it was on a downturn when we got into the trade, and it started to pick up right here. Here is when the MACD crossed on the upside, right here. on the 3rd of July, and then it started to go upwards. So we can see basically we had an upward movement, um, which was indicated by the MACD and also indicated by RSI. RSI was basically saying around this point was pretty, basically reasonably priced, but on the low end. And then when it came up to here and gave back your money, it was back up to a relatively high point, okay, near the 70-point mark. And so we can see that the market was rising during that time. And so, but it took about a month to do that. That was last year in June, and obviously this time now in March, which is this one, it was a lot quicker. But to be honest with you, that was 25p dividend. And this is another thing I want to remind you of. The bigger the dividend, that's a percentage, like, compare 20% compared to 100%, unless there are additional factors, all things being equal, it takes a longer time for a 100% dividend to be digested compared to a 20% dividend. Think of a python eating a pig. The bigger the pig, the longer it takes to digest, or the bigger the meal, the longer it takes to digest. And that's what's basically going on here. So the bigger the dividend, it'll take a while to digest. In this case, it took a month. So I just wanted to show you that, to not panic and to not necessarily worry, but if it does start to dip, if we do find this one starting to dip, then obviously we can put in a hedge and make sure we don't have an erosion of our funds while we're hanging around and waiting. But essentially, here is the range. That's the worst price. It came and it basically broke even at that point right here. And then it didn't go into profit, to be blunt. This one did not go into profit on the short side. And on the long side, this is basically, we gave you a dividend, obviously, and it didn't take it away from you. It hit the point of basically break even, and now it's giving you back. So if it keeps on rising upwards, this is going to be obviously all good for everybody. And for those of you who hedged it went short, as soon as you see it starts to keep on rising on the upside, just get rid of your short before it becomes a problem. Because what the short did was that it was really basically paying insurance, but you don't want insurance to be too expensive, otherwise the short itself becomes a problem. So as it starts to rise, and we want to be watching FTSE, because the FTSE is going to be the main driver for the upward move. So let me just go to a 1-day candlestick. So I want to basically zoom out and get some perspective on this thing here. See where we're going. It tells me my machine is not responding. That's not helpful. Oh, here we go. Okay, so we are in this upward channel right now, and it only really started yesterday. Well, in fact, today is really the beginning of the rise, because for the last 3 days prior to today, it was going sideways. It went up, down, up, and then it was really going nowhere. Only today it started to rise. So if it stays in this upward channel, then clearly we need to get rid of the short. And if it wants to dip again and go down, and then obviously we need to get the short in place. But as you can see, the MACD suggests that it's crossing on the upside and on the FTSE 100. And if all things stay in this channel, this is going to look like it wants to recover. But as you know, as we said, it's not responding to the upward march from 2 o'clock this afternoon. It wasn't responding to it at all. And so we'll just have to see what's going on. So I think what's happened is that you've got upward movement in the stock market generally, and you've got this negative news in the housing market specifically, which is not really helpful. So in fact, let's have a look at Persimmon from the point of view of a daily. Let's have a look at daily. Let's see what's going on for them. I want to see what kind of trend they were in. Okay, this is going back to November. And so we can see basically they were here. They came down a bit, went up. They were in a downward channel up until the beginning of February. And then they moved slightly up. they gapped up enormously, so obviously some good news happened, and then it basically came down again. It was obviously clearly overstated, came down some more. That was quite a big gap, and that's a really big candlestick, to be honest with you. And that happened on the 27th of February. Obviously, some news took place for them specifically, and then it basically was drifting upwards, which is a good sign, obviously, for those who run long. It was drifting upwards. It's gone. It's gone. It's paid a dividend, and it's fallen by exactly the dividend itself. And if it marches upwards from here, then obviously we're going to get our money back. I don't know, sometime before a month, if we use last year's performance as a guide. Okay, guys, I hope that was useful. And giving those of you who are still in Persimmon, because I don't really want anyone to kind of panic and think, oh my God, I'm waiting 2 days for my money back. It's taking too long. I want us to get our expectations set correctly. And so I would suggest that we just watch and wait and see. But for a large dividend like we received today, last year's performance said it can take anywhere up to a month. Okay. Like I said, if it starts to dip downwards, just put in a short to make sure that you don't have an erosion of your fund while you're hanging around waiting. All right, guys, hope that was helpful. Take care. Bye now.